Yeah. As a shorty playing in the front yard of the crib, fell down and I bumped my head. Somebody helped me up and asked me if I bumped my head. I said, yeah. So then they said, oh, so that means you gonna switch it on them. I said, yeah, flip mode. Flip mode is the greatest. You know, and as a shorty, I was always told that if I ain't gonna be part of the greatest, I gotta be the greatest myself. Come on.
Segment 2 of the Thursday edition of the Flashback. Radio Hondo with you here as always, where we keep things at full pressure. We might hesitate, but we don't deflate. And we keep the news coming. One of the big headlines coming out ever since Sunday, of course, has been what they are dubbing as Deflategate, which I hate saying. The New England Deflatriots have essentially been under the hot seat as of since Sunday due to the underinflated ball situation. 11 of the 12 balls now have come back and been found to have been underweight, underinflated for their championship game against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, one of the other headlines that coming out of there is that the NFL was actually aware of this since the team's first played in Indianapolis brought it up back in November. So this hasn't been a secret to the NFL, and why they have allowed this to carry on or haven't taken a full investigation or taken any course of action since then is a huge question mark. So whether or not New England is guilty of this is becoming less and less relevant for me. And the bigger question is why the NFL did nothing about it when they knew about things. Bill Belichick came out earlier today in the morning, recorded, segment 1. I did that late last night. And so this morning caught a couple other headlines. Bill Belichick came out with a press conference. He didn't reveal any new information. He's not going to put himself in a vulnerable position. He's not going to accidentally say something that may, hurt his case. So we have a press conference for Bill Belichick to address the issue. He's not bringing up any new information. He's not going to reveal anything. He's not going to incriminate himself or his team. So more questions get back to the NFL. Why wasn't anything done before? What were they doing? They're building a case? Who are they, the FBI? Are they the FBI taking on the mob or something, trying to build a case? They're not going to bust these smaller crimes because they're waiting for the big one to get the big guy at the end to bring down the entire ring? No, this is the NFL. When a problem comes up, you nip it in the butt right away. You don't wait around. You don't try to hold out for a bigger prize. No, you take care of the problem right ahead. And now, where are we at? We're heading into the Super Bowl, and we're talking about deflated balls instead of the game itself, the game coming up, the game that we want to watch. Now, my passion of sports has always been driven by numbers, whether that's the PSI of the ball or no, not really, or batting averages, things like that, which is why I'm a huge fan of the game of baseball. Now, we had our Hall of Fame inductees just recently, and of course, without fail, a man known as Pete Rose always finds his way to get involved in the conversation. Now, it's not always been on his own free will, mind you. There have been times when he's been sought out to talk about things. But that doesn't create any hesitation for Charlie Hustle to respond, of course. Now, readers recently asked Pete about voting for Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. Do you know what his response was? I'll give you one guess. Yes, of course. Pete said, I'd vote for them to get in. Of course you would, Pete. Of course you would. Because if these guys get in, then they look worse and more tarnished than you do. And so that is a credit for you to get in. I'm not going for it, Pete. Nobody's going for it. There was a time when the argument for Pete Rose was valid. It was valid to a degree. He has the numbers, of course. Had a lot of great seasons, the batting average, the hits. But the more he creeps around and continues to stick his foot in his mouth, the less empathy we all have for him. And I believe we've actually gone even beyond that point by now, where he is working on negative credit. The day I truly stopped believing that he belonged in the Hall of Fame was the first and only time I ever saw him in person. It was back in 2005. Illinois, North Carolina were getting ready to play for the national title game in basketball. March Madness. Into April, of course. And I was with my family. I was walking down the street, and we saw Pete Rose doing a signing for his recent book. Now, that's not grounds to condemn a man for self-promotion. But the fact that we were on the Vegas Strip certainly did influence my opinion of the man and what it means to be in the Hall of Fame. And because of that, I don't have much respect for the guy. Go do your book signing somewhere else. Are you going to go to Vegas when you're talking about a guy who is in trouble and hot water because of his gambling? Whether or not that was for or against his own team. So Pete, just go back into the hole, man. Just quiet down for a while. Just stay out of it. If somebody asks you about the Hall of Fame and your takes on the Hall of Fame at this point in your life, just say, I'd rather not talk about it. It's okay not to talk about it. You don't have to open your mouth every single time. All right, NBA discussion, plenty to get into. A full slate of games last night. The Wednesday night NBA slate was full of action. Two games in particular were very important. And at midseason, this is a critical time for a lot of teams, including some that have had some lofty goals heading into the year, got off to troubled starts. Last night, however, we saw the Thunder, a team trying to make up ground in the Western Conference. Now they are healthier than they've ever been all season long. Finally over 500, and they were challenged last night, the hands against Washington Wizards. For the Thunder, Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant were in full action last night, taking charge of the court, back and forth battle with Washington. The game goes into overtime. Russell Westbrook ends up hitting the game winner. 8 seconds left to go. Thunder now improved to 22-20. 2 games above 500, best they've been all season. They won their 4th straight game and now are 7-3 in their last 10. Now, those 4 straight wins, that includes Golden State at home, on the road against Orlando, on the road against Miami, and on the road last night against Washington. They have 2 more tough road games coming up, and then the schedule lightens up a little bit after that. So this is a really good time for the Thunder to be able to make a push heading into the home stretch of the NBA season. So Atlanta and Cleveland up on the schedule, then things get a little bit lighter. Atlanta tops overall in the Eastern Conference. Washington was number 2. They took them down last night. And then Cleveland sitting there, a really tough team, especially with LeBron back now. And looking like they're getting healthier. The Cavaliers, that is. So a really good test for the Thunder moving ahead. For Washington, on the other hand, they're 7-3 in their last 10 as well. Still on a good pace in the East, 2nd overall. Despite the fact that it was a big win for the Thunder, Washington now has a 4-game swing in which they can pick up some ground again. They take on Portland on the road. It's a 4-game West Coast swing heading down through the South there. So they start with Portland, who's without LaMarcus Aldridge now. His hand is in a cast. No timetable that I've heard of on when his return is. So big hit for Portland, who's sitting number 2 in the West right now. Then they take on Denver. Then they take on the Lakers. So they should win at least 2 out of 3 of those games. And then they take on a tough Phoenix team coming up in Phoenix. That's what Washington has ahead of them. Now for Cleveland, another team got off to a rough start, trying to bounce back. They picked up another much-needed win over Utah at home on Tuesday, 106-92. The Cavs are now on a 4-game winning streak themselves and starting to give a push at Chicago for the top spot in the Central. Now, Chicago is a team that they just beat a couple of nights ago. And the Bulls, meanwhile, as we discussed, suffering from the Dunleavy factor. With Dunleavy not in the lineup, Butler is not as effective. Shooting percentages for the team are down. And the team just doesn't work properly. People are in the wrong places. Dunleavy is a sharp shooter, so he draws some of that defense attention and allows the Bulls to be more effective on offense. They can go without Gasol. They can miss a game with no out. But they cannot afford to miss too many more games without Mike Dunleavy, to have too many games where Dunleavy isn't a part of it. He is the difference maker on this team. He is what makes things gel. We have a lot of effective players, but without Mike Dunleavy kind of quietly running that court, the Bulls are not the same team right now. They're home tonight against San Antonio. Spurs look sharp right now. Leonard's back in the lineup. And so the Bulls are looking like they're most likely going to lose again. Given what we just said, plus throw in the fact that the Spurs have beaten them 4 straight times in 8 out of 10, I really don't think Chicago has much of a chance right now. So that game, this slide that they're in, I think they're 2-6 out of their last 8 right now with Dunleavy out. Doesn't look to get much better. Dunleavy out with the ankle problem. That's the biggest problem for the Chicago Bulls right now. Another game from last night that was actually supposed to be good was Golden State and Houston. Rockets desperately tried to stay in the game in the first quarter. Walked into the second frame, just down 3. Third quarter, all hope disappears. All hope disappears. Golden State has taken the first 3 games of this series. Last night was the 4th and final game between the two teams in the series for the year. So Houston really needed to come in here, establish that they have some ground in this battle between the two teams, establish some position, show that they could be effective against this team and possibly beat them in the playoffs if they have to face them. And they weren't able to come through at all. James Harden was supposed to prove something out there last night. Klay Thompson shut him down defensively in the last game against the two teams between them. Harden started strong, put the Warriors, in a tough spot defensively. He had 13 of his 33 points on the night in the first quarter. This is James Harden. But the other 20 after the first quarter, they end up going into what's going to be garbage time. Because in the second quarter, the Warriors pulled together as a team. They outscored Houston 30-13. 30-13. So they go into the break with a 20-point deficit. And things didn't get much better. Harden, he doesn't play defense. At least not the majority of the time. And he got out-hustled. No surprise. Gets out-hustled by Klay Thompson. Thompson puts up 27 on the night. Great day for him. Amazing third quarter. So Golden State continues to display some dominance, versatility. Andrew Bogut was back in the lineup. He's a big part of things. Doesn't score a lot of points, but he protects that rim. 10 rebounds, 5 blocks in 22 minutes last night. Plus, on top of that, he holds Howard down to 7 points through 3 quarters. And it was done by the fourth. 24-point lead going into the final frame. Bogut didn't even have to play in the fourth frame. And much of the starters didn't have to. They're getting so much production out of so many players on that Golden State team. Whether it's Barnes or Curry or Klay Thompson, Bogut defensively. So many solid contributors. That Spitz, he's been putting up some numbers. They have a lot of players that can just step up into roles. And they're looking really sharp. Couple teams also in a funk with Chicago right there. Right now, Portland's having a tough time. And things aren't getting better. We mentioned LaMarcus Aldridge. His hand, he came down on somebody the other night. His hand came down on somebody trying to strip the ball away. And he instantly knew. Walked off the court. So he's not. He's in a highly questionable position right now as to when he's going to return. And I want to talk about some more of the Blazers. Probably going to do that next week. I've been working on getting a good friend of mine, Chad, who follows the team closely, to join us. However, we got a little bit of a tie-up on that. Chad's a small. He's like a Steph Curry size kind of guy with the group. And here's the one thing that was funny about the Golden State blowout last night over Houston. Curry actually got into an incident where he's getting pushed around a little bit here and there. It finished up with Trevor Ariza. And he tried to attack Trevor Ariza, go after Trevor Ariza. But right behind him was Green. Green for Golden State comes up behind him and just picks up Curry and swings him around like a little kid. It was great. It was great. Curry's one of those guys. He gets things done. You always have your pack of friends. You have your pack of friends. And in that pack of friends, you usually have the smaller guy, and then there's, 2 or 3 like average size guys, and then there's your big enforcer guy who kind of protects. And Curry goes around, walks the walk, talks the talk, and when somebody tries to come back at him, boom, he's got his posse. It's the way it should be. It's the way it should be. He's talking and he's walking. If you're walking, you can talk all you want. If you're just talking, then there's an issue there. But Curry does both, so he deserves it, man. Anyway, Portland in a funk right now. Want to get to my buddy Chad. He is the Steph Curry of our group. He's a big Blazer fan as well as a Packer fan, which is why I was unable to get him on this past weekend. I called him on Sunday, and he was just so down about that Green Bay Seattle game, the way that turned. So I'll be checking back in with him this upcoming weekend, see if we can get him on for next Tuesday. I have more football and headlines coming up in segment 3, and I'll handle some of your emails. We got a question regarding the Seahawks and how they're going to score against the Patriots come Super Bowl time. I'm Radio Hondo, and this is The Flashback.
Give me some more. Give me some more.